So Sarah, I'm going to send you a new link. The old one did not work, but this new one is up and going. You guys are good to go.
Okay, we call the meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. First agenda item is to approve our minutes from the governing board meeting of October 1st. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? Any revisions or changes that we need to make? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from 10/1/2020.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye.
Very good. Minutes are approved, Sarah. Discussion of the marketing and recruiting for 2021, 22. I guess from my perspective, I'm hoping that very, very quickly we're going to see some sort of dashboard for our website. I know that the kids are going to start selecting courses here pretty quickly. And I have to say that right now the website confuses me, and I'm pretty up to date with what it's supposed to be able to do. So I'm hoping that we can get some sort of priority to that, to be able to at least funnel those folks that do end up on the website into the right forms, the right documents that they need to execute in order to participate in the virtual school. So, Sarah, any comments, or Dave?
I might let Dave start just because.
Closer?
Yeah, I can certainly start. And Stan, I think you're absolutely correct. I think that the website is confusing. And if we go back to our last conversation, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. One of the things that we had talked about was just even the naming convention of the academy. What do we call it? And Aaron and Sarah and I have had many conversations over the past month or so about what seems to make the most sense. We've consulted with Tracy a bit on that too, while the work was happening in the background with Christensen Consulting on the logo. And it is our recommendation to the board that we collapse the branding into one name, Hudson Virtual Learning Academy, and do away with the two channels, where allowing the virtual charter school to operate in the background as a mechanism for open enrollment students in, but not as anything, because it just doesn't seem to have a function beyond the mechanism to allow open enrolled students into the district for virtual education. I think if we start with that agreement, it will be easier for us to mock up a web page, because then we'll know exactly what we need to do. The next step would be to meet with our graphic designer. So Christensen Creative, they do all of our logo work, but we also work with a freelance designer that is more of the, hey, we have an idea, let's sit down and talk about this idea, and he helps us create a visual that would make sense. So in our conversation, we see it as three things: a logo, a tagline that is very descriptive and concise about what the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy is all about, and then into the process piece. So open to your thoughts and recommendations based on that quick summary.
I really like the unified branding. Looking at the logos, I was hoping that's what that meant. And I think that was one of the biggest pitfalls for me with our existing website, was the confusion around that. So I like the general thrust of that quite a bit.
Okay.
I'm a bit concerned only for that person that may be searching charter schools and to make sure that we dump any charter school searches into the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy. I mean, I'm thinking particularly for people outside of district. They're not going to know to go that path.
Sure. A couple of things, and actually, I think Pete, we might lean on you a little bit for some of the technical expertise here that I think you might be able to help us out with. But two things. First of all, and Stan, that's a very legitimate concern. The first thing I would say is that most people that are going to say, "Hey, I'm interested in the Hudson or into a virtual charter school," are going to go to DPI where we'd be listed there, and that would bring them to the website. The other thing is, I think in the development of the web page, as long as we make sure that a search for virtual charter school, that we'd have those terms as part of the whatever it's called that allows someone that would Google to find us. And that's why I was going to rely on Pete when I had to say the whatever it's called.
Yeah, not to get too into it, but there is a keywords list, although historically over time that has been diminished in its value. So but there's a nice alignment now where if you want to tell a human something, you're also telling the robots the same thing. So if our verbiage is pretty clear upfront, like either between the tagline or just, soon thereafter, clarifying those finer points of what the schooling really means and what your options are, that should help. I mean, I'm not an SEO expert, but generally speaking, you want your content to sort of match what people are searching for. So hopefully if our content is well written, the search engine optimization part of that is sort of an afterthought to sort of reinforce it. But the big thing is that the content lines up.
Okay. Thank you. That is helpful. And you said you weren't an expert, but you still use stuff in there I didn't understand. So that makes you an expert.
Sorry, you have to use a few acronyms and stuff just to sort of for credibility purposes. I don't know what they mean either.
I think our next meeting may be a teaching session as opposed to a working session, so that the rest of us can catch up with Pete. But no, that's my only concern. I mean, obviously, there's some logistics that go along with that for our governing board and the bylaws and so forth that would need to catch up with that once we come up with this new name and new logo and so forth. But I don't want to slow this down for any of that kind of work that needs to happen in the background. I like the Virtual Learning Academy approach. It sort of takes the confusion for me out of the picture. If you're interested in the Virtual Learning Academy, whether you're in district or out of district makes no difference, other than mechanics on the backside. So that would be extremely helpful. Regina, Melissa. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
No, you go ahead, Stan.
Excuse me?
You go ahead, Stan. You're good.
Oh, I'm just interested to hear what either Regina or Melissa may have for comments on this as well.
I like the idea of one. I don't think there's a need for two. And if you look at the logos, they must have done some research of other things, right? I don't know, charter school's not in that many of them, right? You'll get there in the end, but I like just one. I think it's too confusing to have two paths.
We should probably mention something too, because a little bit of history that we never really talked about, because we had this full year with the Virtual Learning Academy without the charter. And when we were naming that, there's a lot of conversation about what we wanted to name it. And we very deliberately included Hudson in the name. And that was even with the anticipation of a potential charter in the future, because there were a few different iterations of the name that didn't include Hudson, with the idea that maybe we're trying to attract a broader audience. But the reality is our most likely open enrollee into the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy will be regional. There will be some that throughout the state, but we're more likely to attract regional folks. And honestly, we want to. We think there's more value regionally, because one of the things we pride ourselves on and will continue to pride ourselves on is the ability for students to access the other related services that we can offer, to offer a really well-rounded educational experience, not just focused on academic achievement. Some of those services are best accessed locally, coming on site. So we would love to have students that periodically come to the Hudson High School to experience or receive service or something, so they have that full experience. Obviously, that is limited for people that say, live in Green Bay, Madison, Milwaukee, or, Platteville. So, so that just a little history into the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy. But it sounds like, based on the general direction, that we should go down that path of keeping the name Hudson Virtual Learning Academy, and then we'll, if with that information and with the work that Christensen did, I don't think it'll take long for us to start to mock up website, like a website template, essentially, that we could then share with the board for consideration, as opposed to building the website first. I think we'll mock something up and bring it back if that works for everyone.
That works fine for me. And I agree with you. I like keeping the Hudson and Hudson schools. Hudson has a very, very positive connotation for local folks. And I do believe that the vast majority of our enrollees will not be Madison or Milwaukee or Platteville or Denver or anywhere else. So I think that is meaningful. It does put a location on the map as to what the base is for our virtual school, and I'm happy with that. I think it simplifies things. It puts a foundation underneath it, and I think we're on the right path.
Good.
I guess, Dave, the next question then becomes, is there anything that you need from us as a governing board to, or is there anything you need from us, or are we just now going to await the first draft here of how we present this whole concept to the public?
I'm thinking that maybe it makes sense now for Sarah, if you walk us through the logo work and some of your thoughts related to that, because that probably would be the next specific action we'd like from the board. Once we know that, we can include that in the mock-up of whatever we produce.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get to my unmute from the multiple screens I'm in. Okay, so when Tracy sent me the round one logos, which is the 4-page document, I think it is, the PDF, she said that, a lot of the conversation that Christensen was having about the logo was, how far do we want to stray from the standard Hudson Raiders look and feel that we have sort of established pretty well with all of our different programs. And so I think, at least to start with, that's why they mocked up, logos that are very closely aligned to what you see across Hudson School District programs. And I think especially if we go with the academy label, that continues to make a lot of sense. That's my thinking. When I looked at, so she also had them include the 2 pages of other schools' logos, which you guys alluded to. And I just noticed that a lot of them, the icon is kind of smaller and the words to identify the academy, the school, the whatever was larger. So then I kind of went off of that and mocked up the second sort of looking logo with the Hudson Virtual Learning or Virtual Learning Academy pulled off to the side and larger. And then kind of the idea would be to make the shield and the computer in the shield maybe a little bit bigger, but taking off the banner. And Tracy kind of replied to that and said, yep, in part of their mock-up, they would include lots of different variations of whichever logo we kind of picked and liked the best. So that was kind of where we're at with the logo piece. So maybe taking some thoughts on that right now from you guys, if you have some input on any of those or all of those would be good.
I'll start because I don't know, it's the web thing and I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about or something, but I don't. I also gravitated immediately towards the one with the simpler computer as the symbology. I think the other symbols were confusing or just not as, like the mouse makes sense, I suppose, but although not really because kids don't even use mice. So I like that. I think the Chromebook might be the physical manifestation of this thing that we're doing for most of, and the quickest explainer perhaps. So I think that's a good symbol that made the most sense to me. Seeing it on the shield is a little confusing. A shield with a computer on it is not necessarily, it makes a lot of sense. So I also like that you moved it to make the copy a lot bigger. I think that's a normal thing to see too, and just in the web in general, because you want these things to look good, be legible in a wide format. We're not putting this like on it's not like a little badge we're adding to a trinket or something like that, like some merch, which a lot of logos do end up doing. And they'll often, like I've seen a fair amount of like multiple formats, and I think it sounds like they might do that for us, which would be cool, because there might be a place for a more vertically oriented, but I think in general, the horizontal one will probably be more natural in a web page layout. So I like that direction that you took it with, Sarah. So, and I would even like ask if we can simplify it more. I'm a little like the shield and the computer together feel a little bit confusing to me. If you look at a lot of the examples, there'll be one thing in words, having sort of a complex thing in words just takes a little more mental effort. It's not like we can't figure it out, but I'd be curious if it's worth diverging from that shield, or maybe there's a way to merge the two ideas somehow. Because I do think the Chromebook kind of makes sense that does feel like a shorthand for what we're doing. So I'm kind of ranting, but that's kind of those are my first impressions. And in general, I think it fits. I like that it fits with the branding. I like that the Hudson naming, the Hudson like visual language, I don't see why we would diverge from that. Hudson is like where this is springing from. The staff are going to hopefully be more and more involved over time. We're staying to that Hudson world. I don't feel like we need to like carve out a totally new space, but maybe we can tune it a little more.
Maybe we can do the computer a little bit larger as the main logo, and then how they have the little H in there. Like if we wanted the shield, we could do like the H in a shield on the computer.
Yeah.
So sort of a logo
I like
inside
that
the
approach.
computer.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time I looked at it, and so I just glanced, right? I didn't get that it was a computer until I actually looked at it. So I agree. I think it's too much in one place, maybe. but I like the idea of the computer. I just didn't realize it till Pete, you started talking about, oh yeah, that is a computer. I had to look closer.
I had the same reaction. I didn't notice that at first. And a couple of points, and you're absolutely right, Pete. When this is, if we decide on our general direction, Christensen will put together a horizontal banner, an individual, some small icons that we can use in various settings, and I'm sure we can ask for more if there's some specific things that we're looking for. The only other thing that I didn't connect with is that it just says Hudson Virtual Learning as opposed to Hudson Virtual Learning Academy. It seems to be missing that piece. But just my thoughts.
You know, it's interesting. I was hoping that we could even trim it more. I don't think we can, but you know, words don't get read. My impression is that words don't really get read in these kind of scenarios. The fewer words, the better. You know, it's more, you know, they'll read a big word or two, but soon attention drops. And like, if you sort of squint your eyes at this, you know, you just see like some of these logos, you just see the blue banner with some text on it, but you can't actually interpret it. Whereas if you look at some of the other logos, like at least you can see that there's one big word and you can understand the shape of it. So I was almost wondering, can we do just Hudson Virtual? Can we do that? And which, that seems weird. But I agree, it is a little strange if we have the official name be Hudson Virtual Learning Academy, which is a bit of a mouthful from a branding perspective.
So could we take out learning and just say Hudson Virtual Academy? Do we need learning? And that's what they're doing. Hopefully.
We're so optimistic.
I agree that less is more.
Mm-hmm.
We can't really take out virtual, you know, right? That is
there, but I think
that's a key
forward
distinction.
is too much.
The other thing we could consider, depending, and again, we have to consider this within the environment it will be viewed. So on the web page, we'd obviously have to have the full title somewhere, but it doesn't need to be necessarily in the logo. So we could consider the acronym too, and just have the HVLA, and then elsewhere the explanation as a potential.
Are we committed to any of the existing naming? Like if we really decided we wanted to do Hudson Virtual Academy instead, is that acceptable?
That's a really good question, because the board did take action on the name, and in fact there was quite a conversation. Now the Hudson Virtual Charter School, I think we would have full authority to change that. We'd have to change it in the contract. But in terms of the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so maybe it's worth finding that out, but also maybe that probably just means we should stick with Hudson Virtual Learning Academy being the official name. I'm not sure. And that, I think HVLA is at least, I mean, talking about legibility, if you could just put that in the logo, it's really clear. On the other hand, it doesn't mean as much, you know, if people are excited about Hudson, they won't know that it's Hudson until they read further.
But if we would go with the mock-up that Sarah did, where if it's just in that banner, it's HVLA, and then the more descriptive language horizontally next to that. And again, I think if we take these ideas, the general ideas, we can give them to Christensen and they can go through. That's why they call it round one. They just want the general. Is it my understanding then, based on the consensus of the board, that we like the idea of the icon, at least with the computer, perhaps reversing that where it's the computer with the logo inside, versus can we eliminate any of the others and just focus on that? Because that would help directionally.
I would agree with that. That seems to be the cleanest one.
Yep, me too.
Agreed.
Regina, are you good with that?
Yes. Sorry, I was
Okay.
trying to unmute.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Okay, that's super helpful. So we can work with that definitely. Then I alluded to this earlier, but one of the other things we'll be doing shortly is then working to come up with perhaps the infographic is what jumps to the front of my mind as I'm thinking about getting some of the key details out that are a little bit beyond the scope of a logo, without necessarily splitting into the Hudson Virtual Charter School and Hudson Virtual Learning Academy. We were talking about the idea that it's really about information and then registration. So if a student or a family wants to register, it's one click and they just have to follow the process and we'll take them through and get them in the right place, as opposed to if you are in this situation, do this. If you're in this situation, do this, but let the process guide them through. That's our most recent thinking.
Do we have any sense of what some copy would be, that would be that intro blurb that people first see? I guess maybe the tagline is that maybe it's slightly more words than a tagline. I'm not sure. I'll take.
1 second.
Unmuting. Okay. So we did, when Tracy met with a team of us, she jotted down some notes from that and put them onto a Google document. I can get that into the calendar momentarily. I just can't do as many things as I want to on this tiny screen. So one thing that we came up with was take charge of your learning. My voice, my choice, my future, or like your voice, your choice, your future, kind of going from that student perspective. Then we had some things about like, your child has something special inside. We know it too. The Hudson Virtual Learning ignites the minds of children like yours, bringing learning and their innate possibilities alive. Together, we're helping Wisconsin students reach their true personal potential. We bring learning alive for every student with a personalized program of engaging courses and caring teachers within a vibrant school community. And then an educational option that helps you reach your goals through flexible pacing, schedules, and learning environment. So like I said, I'll throw that in the calendar invite for you guys too, so you can see all of that. But that's kind of the bare bones of, I think, what was shared with Christensen and kind of what Tracy gleaned from the rambling meeting that we had with her. So thoughts on any of that?
I guess my question, Sarah, comes down to I like the less is more approach, and the Hudson Virtual Academy is catchy to me, and then somehow working the learning environment into the tagline so that we stick with 3 words for our sort of our logo work and our title, if you will. I mean, to me, it's rather obvious that this is a teaching learning environment. I think the thing that we need to sort of expand on is that it is a virtual environment, a virtual scenario. I'm just wondering if having learning into the logo isn't sort of redundant. Are there academies where one doesn't learn? I'm just.
What's the name of the academy that decides the Oscars?
Good
The academy,
point.
they're always thanking them.
Yeah. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts there, or whatever it is. Yeah. All right. I'll sit back down.
I would be for trying for looking at removing that too, though. I do think that it is a bit of a mouthful, and it does cause, it's, I think it's learning is pretty implied by the word academy. So I like it, but I think it's not, sort of as efficient as it could be. In terms of the tagline, I was mostly curious just because I was trying to think of when we introduce the concepts of like what the options are, and I'm not. It doesn't seem like it should be very, very top of mind, because I don't know that people will understand it right away. Anyway, if we said, hey, there's that whole split that we didn't want to confuse people out, we still don't want to confuse people about. But there are going to be the people that know I'm looking for a charter school, and as opposed to any other arrangement with open enrollment or whatever. So we do need to get that information up sooner rather than later, and I would assume it's in the first paragraph or two, probably, of actual copy or bullet points or something like that. So maybe that's a question down the road for web design. For that content. But it does speak to Dave's point about, at what point are we explaining how this works? Whether it's in the registration flow only, where we start giving you an option or two, or on the surfaces. And I guess my gut is that I think we should do it on the surface as well, before they have to click through anything. They might have to scan some text. It's not gonna be the first thing we show them, but we probably wanna say, say what options are, without clicking anything. I thought.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said, I think that's really helpful. I think that will give us some clarity as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I agree, Sarah. And I think that there's honestly very little reason that we can't adjust the name slightly. I don't think that's really going to be a deal breaker for anyone. So I think we can move ahead with that concept. And I agree. I think early on, we want to get the words Hudson and Wisconsin, because that's our target audience. It's anyone in, obviously, primary audience, students in Hudson. Close second is all of the students throughout the state of Wisconsin. So we want that early on. And I think it's only in the registration process, then we want to erase all the confusion, and just by answering the right questions. So are you a resident of the Hudson School District? If that's a yes, then it leads you down one path. If it's a no, you state your resident school district and go from there. So we can, and that will be more on our end. We'll do that work versus Christensen. So in recap then, to make sure we're moving in the right direction, Sarah, you'll get the that Google Doc in the calendar invitation. Then we can take a look at, okay, great. So we can take a look at some of that language, and maybe if we take sections that we think really that really resonates with us, we can highlight that and then know that that's something we'd like to include. We can work on some of the copy that would be front and center in the web page. We've got the direction on the logo and some of the titling conventions. So I think that's pretty solid. Does that match what everyone is thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Good deal. All right. Should we take a look then at the new document that Sarah linked for us?
It should have generated an email additionally, so you should be able to get to it through the calendar invite or your email. Hopefully. And these are more like separate thoughts. So this wouldn't be, this wouldn't be all just lumped together.
World's longest tagline.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and give my first impression. I don't know if people are done reading yet, but maybe it's the engineering mind I have that's so practical or whatever that my wife can't stand. But the last one that's seems the most like, here's what you get. These are the things we give you.
Better.
As opposed to a lot of the other ones are more about what sort of very high level educational goals are. Those are very practical, like what's the difference between regular school and what we're offering. The flexible pacing schedules, flexible is key in my mind as part of the sort of sales pitch.
With that, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I agree. I mean, I think the last one that's one that caught my eye as well. It's kind of like when you first come to the website, this is what you get. This is what we're here for.
I think just a quick editing thing, we could probably get rid of the educational option that helps you and just say, reach your goals through flexible pacing schedules and learning environment.
That's a more of a tagline. If it's a tagline, it should be short, right?
Right.
Short and direct.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, and that's helpful. That was actually going in a different direction than I was going, but I like that better. The next thing that I think we need to get to is that idea of Hudson and Wisconsin. So I was thinking of embedding that, but that would only make that longer. So maybe that's next level. If that's like tagline right at the top, and then a little bit more description.
I think you're thinking the next paragraph that
Yes.
starts to describe it, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Dave, is there a real issue with limiting this to Wisconsin, or could we not expand that beyond?
No, we can't legally. It's open enrollment is only allowable within the state.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I was hopeful.
I feel like we should go rogue. State accreditation is overrated.
And employment, right?
Well, there's that.
I technically have had 2 students, one last year and one this year, from different states, but it's because they've been part of our Hudson Havoc hockey program. And so they have, become residents. They have families that they're staying with, but we have service kids from other states. So we have that under our belt as well. So, and 50% of our students are in the charter school are from the Madison area.
that's one.
Mm-hmm.
We'll create a chart for the webpage too, just advertising that fact.
Yes. And yeah, if you want to look at academics, our charter school students are performing very well this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good.
Well, but I do think that is something that we want to, at some point, we want to promote exactly how well those kids are doing, and that this is something that works because of its flexibility, and that the kids that are participating are doing extremely well, and I think that is certainly a promotable concept. It, I wouldn't want to have someone stop and think, well, how do these kids compare to brick and mortar, kids? And they're probably all the same. Let's take that and blow our horn a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder if we could do any. I mean, we don't have a ton of data probably, but it'd be interesting to look at sort of GPA before and GPA after, because a lot of the kids are probably in situations that are just tough, and this lets them remove impediments. Basically, it's not like they're suddenly geniuses, right? It's like, but that I don't even know if we'd want to tout that, but I would suspect there's a nice positive correlation there.
I think qualitatively too, it would be interesting with some testimonial quotes, that sort of thing, to really get to the heart of how a student feels because of their experience in the academy. Because it goes both ways. We want to serve all students, and we want to make sure that the benefits of the Virtual Learning Academy aren't just for the highest performing students that are already doing well. And to your point, Pete, there's students that will be in difficult situations that hopefully this helps them find success and get on the right track. But as you said, it'd be difficult to have any true quantitative data at this time, but it is something I'm sure we'll be tracking it. We do a lot of disaggregated data work. We've actually, and Aaron and I spend a lot of time talking about this. We've never really talked about any disaggregation about students with, a certain number of virtual classes, but we could add that to our list of things we examine.
Well, it would be interesting to see, and I don't know how we would collect that data to be able to state this unequivocally, but it would be interesting to see that with the flexibility of the virtual environment, how much better perhaps that some of these kids that were struggling in the brick and mortar are able to do because of the flexibility. And because of they're able to work at their own pace, and their, everything that goes along with that. I just think that, I'm a data person. I think that kind of information would be incredibly valuable. And it just intuitively seems to me that the kids that may be struggling in the brick and mortar environment could very, very easily do much better in a virtual scenario where there's just not the distractions and other things that may challenge them.
So I'm just going to offer my 2 cents on this. I think it is important, and I think looking at information is definitely in the purview of this board. I don't know if it's necessarily marketing material. I think, and once we have a larger body of data to suggest that, this is the track record, that would be great. With the limited number of students we have, I would hate to make a case for some data that in 2 years is completely different because it's such a small sample size. But from in terms of work that we can dig into, I think that is absolutely important stuff that we can examine. And again, if we start to disaggregate data, looking at, because I would be interested to see students that are high achieving, high performing students, how are they doing? Students that enter the academy because of some barriers, how has the academy helped remove those barriers? It's sort of 2 ways to look at that data set that would be very important.
Well, I think that goes back to your comment on qualitative quotes from the students
Mhm.
that I think can certainly become marketing material, that someone that was struggling for whatever number of reasons, that chose to go down the virtual path, and then found that it was easier because this, that, and the next thing. They were able to maintain their job. They were able to do things, in the evenings and blah, blah, blah. I think that kind of qualitative quote is extremely marketable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And I think, Erin is really our resident expert in this. This is in her wheelhouse in terms of examining the barriers that students face and then coming up with strategies and systems to overcome those barriers. So we'll be in good hands.
This is interesting. I have a couple of clients in my day job that are working through some marketing issues and have a set of personas that are supposed to captivate and capture all of their most common types of customers. And I feel like this is a moment where we should think about that and say, who are the top three? They're always generalizations, right? But there's probably some common patterns that we can follow. Oh, these are the kind of students that we're talking about. And maybe our goal would be to say, okay, we've identified the three most common cases of students where they get a lot of value out of this. And let's quickly try to find the some testimonials that will speak to that really quickly. I'm this kind of student, I had this kind of problem, and then this happened, and and my life improved, basically. So I'd be curious to see from that and ask the question, what are the types of scenarios that we're most likely to benefit from? People are most likely going to say, that's the thing I need when they see it. And then find the people that represent that as best we can and try to recruit them to do a testimonial or something like that.
Very well put.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting. All of what we've just been talking about ties in really well to the line that you guys picked out of the potential copy that we have from Tracy. So that last line, I took that, or I created that out of student testimonials from last year. So I went back through, I had a survey that I sent out during remote learning and asked students, what did they like about virtual learning? What was going well, that type of thing. And so I had a big spreadsheet with all these different responses from kids. And those things on that list were what they mostly talked about. So, and I even was thinking about going back to some of those students and seeing if we wanted to use any of their specific wording or quotes, getting some permission from them. So we could definitely go down that road if we wanted to look at that, or get fresh ideas from kids too. I mean, this year for sure we could get some new stuff as well. But
did something happen to that quote though in the copying and pasting? So I think we're missing something at the end. Reach your goals through flexible pacing schedules and maybe not through.
I know what you're saying.
The learning environment. It's not flowing with that.
Yeah, because I think flexible is an adjective and learning is sort of an adjective too. So it looks like flexible doesn't apply to learning environments, even though I think we're saying flexible learning environments.
Yeah, I think I copied and pasted as it was, but we can work on it.
I was looking at this. So I've been a little frustrated because of the blame the virus, because it is the virus's fault. But what we're having to do with hybrid and having we're not getting the benefits of online education, all of the possible benefits, because we don't have flexible pacing, flexible schedules. Mm-hmm. And you don't even really have that much flexibility in a learning environment. Yeah, you can move around your house, but you're in your house. So at least the first two are definitely knocked back. So I think this would be eye-opening for parents and families who have only seen what we've been trying to do through this crazy COVID time, instead of a tailored online system that gives you as many benefits as possible that the platform enables. So that actually, I saw that and I was like, oh, I remember when online school meant flexible pacing and schedules.
Mhm.
You know, not making sure, oh, I missed the first 2 minutes of class. You know, my kids have been running around the house doing that.
We've talked about that a little bit from the indirect marketing standpoint. What will the impact of having everyone forced into a virtual learning environment have on the choice to voluntarily enter a blended virtual learning environment? Because if they assume, well, this is what it's like, and that wasn't for me, we really do need to get that out. As I'm reading that too, I'm wondering if we just change it to learning environments, I think it speaks a little bit more clearly. So reach or go through flexible pacing, schedules, and learning environments. Is that okay?
What if you maybe switched it around to reach your goals through a learning environment that offers flexible pacing and schedules?
I love that.
Was it offers?
Reach your goals through a learning environment that offers flexible pacing and schedules.
Or allows, so you,
Allows, yep.
Like that.
Is it, I'm feeling like maybe there's one more thing there too, because the pacing and the schedule, that's the logistics or the management of the learning experience. I'm wondering about the flexible pacing and schedule. There's something about the dynamic nature of education, that it's not simply about, here's the same stuff, but now you get to do it at your own pace or on your own schedule. It has to be something about,
Well, like engaging or innovative.
mhm.
I think there's something to be said about, like, you know, some kids can just watch a video and they'll be fine. Other kids want to read about it or do the exercise. So like, I think that was sort of what maybe flexible learning environment was, in my mind, was hinting at, that, you know, multimodal,
Yes.
multiple opportunities to learn the same concepts. I'm not sure how to phrase that.
But that isn't always true. You know, in those
Right.
WPS classes, you don't get a choice. You know, it's one or you do what they have in there.
Yeah, that's true.
I
That's
think
true
one
too.
of the benefits though is there is stuff that you can't take in the school, right? They have more specialized classes. So, because not everything is offered. There's a lot of classes in WBS that aren't offered today at the high school.
Yeah, I think that the choice for students, I mean, because there's also a lot more levels you can choose from, because a lot of the classes have an honors possibility. We have some credit recovery possibilities. So it has a bit more of that differentiation sort of built in, that possibility. But not sure how that exactly fits.
Well, in terms of jargon related to that, and related to that idea of differentiation, with the next step on that continuum being personalization. So Reacher goes through a personalized learning environment that offers flexible pacing and schedules. I still feel like pacing and schedules.
It feels like the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's choice is the other word that is coming to mind, and that's such a big part of it. It's as Sarah was saying, the wide variety of classes that they're able to take that you just can't offer in a brick and mortar setting.
Mhm.
That's a big part of it. But then we're going to get to a point where we're going to try to get everything in there, and then it's going to be back to being a really long tagline.
I was going to say choice, and then you said personalized, and I thought that choice was sort of nicely implied by that, although the breadth of the options might not be. That's more about tailoring. Doesn't necessarily mean there's a ton of options. So yeah, it's tricky.
I do like
Tailored is a great word too. That's
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tailored to individual student needs or something like that.
Yeah, I like that because my own experience, flexible pacing and schedule isn't always a good thing. Sarah's gonna laugh because my son is the worst at it. He is going to do his entire AP Econ class in December. Just watch, he will. So I don't know that that's always a good thing, but I like the fact that that choice was there, that he has the choice and it's personalized to him and he gets to choose what he wants to do.
Did we want the word personalized right here?
Or tailored, I like that word too. Oh, you
We're
have that.
throwing them all in and then we can take a look here.
Well,
I feel like this should almost be a list of just things we'd like to include, and then the next step is how do you craft a short, clear, coherent tagline that hits on all the key points. I think that's what we're doing anyway. But
yeah. And Melissa, you made a good point earlier. We really, some of it will be in the tagline, but then it's going to give us a good start for the next introductory paragraph.
That's what I was just going to say too, Dave. You know, I don't think that we need to get all of our message into the tagline. We just want to open up that avenue so that the reader wants to go to that next paragraph. And then what else? And, you know, there are times that I've read taglines that have just vomited so much that you all but want to stop reading because they tried to do too much with a tagline. And I'd like to see something catchy, but something that just invites you to keep reading and not overload it, not try to make our entire statement in a tagline.
I feel good about being able to take the next steps. Aaron, Sarah, you feel comfortable with the guidance that we've got enough for the next few steps?
Are there other pieces on this document that you guys really like or don't like that you'd like to see as part of, you know, kind of the opening webpage?
I just wonder if there isn't some means in the mechanics so that we don't even have to ask the question, are you in the Hudson school district or not? I mean, don't we have either zip codes or villages or something that defines Hudson school district so that when they fill in their information, that's going to tell. I mean, obviously, if it comes in as Sun Prairie or Madison, or they're not in the Hudson School District, and that's going to take them down that other path.
It wouldn't be as simple as just adding your zip code because the school boundaries don't follow those addresses. I don't know if it would be possible to build in if they put their address in, if we would know that they're Hudson School District. It's something we can look into, but it may just be simpler to say, do you live within the Hudson School District, yes or no?
Okay.
But we can look into that.
I just sort of wondered if that was one of those necessary evils.
Right.
And I think what we can do is we can make sure that it's very streamlined, that we're not going to have them. What we don't want to do is have them have to duplicate any information, and we want the flow we're feeling as a customized form that just flows right through and allows them to get all the information. What would happen is if they end up being outside the district, then it would guide them to an open enrollment application. If they're inside the district, it would take them into the process that we do to register new students. So it really, after that first step, the process is relatively clear.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you asked the question, Sarah, and I haven't mentioned this one, I'm highlighting the one. I do like this phrase. You know that your child is something special inside. We know it too. The Hudson Virtual Learning, a nice blah, blah, blah. That to me reads as a really nice introduction to that first paragraph, and then we could embed some of the other stuff. Just my thoughts.
I like that one too.
Well, Melissa and I like it, so we're going with it.
Sounds good to me.
I like it.
Works for me too.
Sounds good.
Dave, what are we looking at for a timeline here for next steps?
Yeah, in 2020, the term timeline has taken on a whole new meaning. So I really thought we'd be a little bit further than this at this time. It just, everything's catching up with us a little bit. However, the direction you provided tonight was very specific, and I feel like we can take this and move relatively quickly. We won't have a web page mocked up or a web page developed, but we can have the mock-up done with some language, at least to get to the point of when you would click on the link, this is what you'd see first. Here's where you'd get into the registration process and a general flow like that. I'm thinking that the next step for us is for Aaron, Sarah, and I to schedule a meeting and carve out a chunk of time just to start putting that together. I almost feel like we have enough to get most of it built out and then get it to the wordsmiths to help us clean it up.
Are we still looking to, I mean, last time we were thinking more of the funnels and like making sure people knew where they needed to go. Now I think we're getting away from that, which I think will help our audience a lot. Do we still feel like we need sort of a graphic? I know, Pete, you talked about last time how important it is to kind of have that big visual impact when you get there, not a ton of words. Do we have thoughts on, like, I mean, besides our logo, because I think that achieves something different, but like a graphic or something that we think people need to see right away? I think that would help us if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I don't have a ton of thoughts, but as we've been talking tonight, I think what I've been imagining is that the call to action buttons are really clear. So if we have our intro little blurb, paragraph or two or some bullet points or something like that, and then what are your next steps? If that part is nice and loud so people know what they can do. And I don't know if we would want, so we have obviously a registration flow we're talking about. So just say, register. That's a little strong if you don't know what you're doing. To say, I'm going to register now. I'm not really sure I'm ready to buy. Maybe there's a sort of a learn more action. It could actually be the registration flow. It's just that the registration flow is also educational and people can jump off anytime they want. I'm not sure, but I think we want to progressively keep people excited, and there should be a really clear thing to do next.
I agree, Pete. I just think that very quickly we need to state whether you are in the Hudson School District or outside of the Hudson School District, and as Dave says, and still within the state of Wisconsin. The Hudson Virtual Academy can be a solution for you. Somehow we need to get that message out very, very early on. And then, I mean, if are you in the school district or out of the school district, yes or no, and then next information. But I don't think we need to worry about in the district, out of the district until we have somebody that's interested in pursuing what they've seen. In the meantime, we need to do all of this that we've been talking about tonight. I don't think that we need to make registration, item number 2. Let's get them hooked and on the line, and then we'll worry about registration when they decide that, yeah, they want to pursue this.
The way that I've typically put together like the information gathering piece is either usually called like an application or an interest form. And it's more about them putting out enough information for essentially me to get it, so then I can call them and follow up. So I guess for me, at least in the past, the process is more about them being able to say, hey, I'm interested in 1 class or 5 classes or 2 or whatever. And these are kind of what I'm thinking. Here's my child's past experiences with online, if any. Am I in Hudson or not? Like kind of just those basics. And then I can take it from there. Because when I talk to them, I can tell them, oh, yep. And now part of this process is going to be open enrollment in, and you got to go through that. And then I send them to Tim Miner, and like, so I think, yes, it needs to be on the website, but it's also just getting their information so I know they're interested is really my main goal. But I could be wrong with that.
I just want to make sure that we don't have people that are showing interest or that have come onto the website, they're interested, and then they abort the whole thing because we throw out something like registration application, like there's a commitment that they're making here that before we have the conversation with you, or before the potential attendee has that conversation with you. I'd like to make that more friendly than application, registration. For more information, let's do this.
I think you're all making great points, because when it all comes down to it, the most valuable asset we have as part of the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy is Sarah. So the quicker we get them to talk to Sarah, the better off we are. We want them to have the information and get them to her.
Agreed.
I like that notion too, and I think the learn more as an action. I think it's not crazy to ask for some information and to let them know, like, yeah, we're going to have our coordinator, reach out to you, and she's the expert, and she'll tell you if it's a fit or not, tell you how it all works. I think that's reassuring instead of feeling like a sales pitch. I think it's a really good point.
Agreed.
So Sarah, all the pressure's on you now.
It's perfect. So it brings to mind another example that fits totally with this conversation. The family that came to us from the Madison area, they never filled out the application. Like, I typed in some stuff, so for me, so I'd have their information, but we talked on the phone probably 10 times. But it wasn't about filling out some application piece that is what hooked them. That wasn't what hooked them, but they had a lot of really great questions, and they were really doing their due diligence in finding a program that would work for their child. And I'm definitely not the pushy type. So it's just, hey, how can we help you? How can we make sure this is a good fit? And we'll support, your daughter for sure if she decides to come here, but, good luck to you with whatever you decide, and I, as a parent, that's what I'd want to hear. But so it worked for them, but and then our other student was already a Hudson student who happened to move to River Falls. So I don't have a ton of experience yet with what people want to hear or what gets them here. But I like the idea of the learn more or the keeping it friendly, all of that. I've been writing some of that down. So if you guys have other ideas on that, always feel free to shoot me an email or something too.
One other thought to take that even a little further, I wonder if we can make that initial contact point really easy and not ask for anything that we don't need. If really all we need is, you know, minimal contact info, then maybe that's all we ask for. Unless I don't know how the flow works, unless there's some key, you know, sort of qualifiers that we should get out of the way. You know, are you a Wisconsin resident might be worth checking before we enable the send button, I guess. But we could also just make the copy really obvious with that too. So that might make our form design a lot simpler.
Mhm. Yeah, contact info, grade of the child would be important. Residents would be good to know. But yeah, we probably don't need a ton. For me, it helps to frame the conversation a little bit. If I know if they have any experience and how many courses they're interested in, kind of helps me to go into the conversation. But I've had so many conversations now that I can kind of be prepared no matter what they throw at me, usually for the most part. So.
Well, I sort of think about, you know, as you start into these things as a parent, you know, you may not know, you may not want to overwhelm you. I mean, there's, as much as we would hope that everybody's being 100% truthful, it may not be 100% truthful because one, the parent doesn't know, or two, that they just don't want to look like they're trying to take all of our resources and, you know, yada yada. So I agree with Peter that the less information that we need to have somebody give us, the better. But so that you can be prepared, Sarah, that, you know, ask the questions that you need. But I would say only the questions that you need to get started, and then your conversations, you know, that in that first intro type of call or meeting, you're going to collect all sorts of information. So.
Okay, so I think we have plenty to go with for the next couple steps. And then Stan, your question in terms of when we'll be ready, maybe when we get to the next agenda item, we can figure that out, because we can pick a date, and then Aaron and Sarah and I can base our work schedule on what that next date is and make it work.
Well, I think for all of us, the sooner the better, but I don't want to be pushy or do something unreasonable either. I guess I would rather toss that back and say, you know, what is a reasonable, in the shit show known as 2020, what's a reasonable date for us to try to get together? I mean, it wasn't upsetting to me that we bounced this one off for a week. And, you know, I think that our next meeting can be just a working meeting like this. And I guess for me, the bigger question on that next agenda item isn't so much a date as it is a format. As much as I like in-person meetings and like to get together with you all, it seems as though we should probably stay virtual for the foreseeable future. So, I mean, whether we do it as a hybrid so that you guys are there at the district offices and the rest of us are just coming in virtually, is more of a convenience for all of you. If it's more convenient to go 100% virtual, I'm happy with that. I don't see us going face to face here in the immediate future for sure. So, just my 2 cents.
So our next regularly scheduled meeting is January 21st. Just so we kind of have that as a reminder.
Right. I
Um,
was sort of hoping to get another working meeting in prior to that. That was just my
Mhm.
thought.
Melissa, when do things start getting crazy for you? Is it already December or is it?
It's already crazy.
It's now.
Matter. I don't know that putting my crazy is any worse than any of your crazy though right now. So is what it is.
I don't know, Aaron and Dave, I'm not sure what your schedules are like. I mean, for me, I can get together, you know, I know next Monday, Tuesday, we have more open time now. I don't know if you guys have time, but
My only concern is January 21st sounds like quite some time. We have Thanksgiving next week, and then we're into December. And then we have, in December, we only have 3 weeks. So, I mean, I'm thinking around the first of the year, we should have something that we can share. What I'm thinking is perhaps we could share our progress. So as we start to develop a template or a mock-up of what the web page could look like, we could share that and essentially just to give you progress updates. And then if you feel like you get to the point, like that's probably enough for us to get together and have a meeting, we could look at scheduling something. If that is doable, I think that might make sense from our perspective.
I think that's very realistic, and you know, we want to be conscious of your time and I mean, obviously all of the holidays and that and flexible. I don't know exactly how much of a notice we need to have for a working meeting. If it's just, you know,
24 hours, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we were to have a couple of 2 or 3 days notice, you know, we can certainly pull that together. If we can share the concepts, I think that's helpful as well for and allowing people to perhaps. And I guess I'm still a bit unclear as to how much work we can do outside of a meeting. You know, with what our feedback may be to concepts that you're sharing with us. Is that working outside of meetings, or is that acceptable and allowable?
As long as we're sharing information with you and you're not making decisions as a board, that's fine. So it's really, so what we'll do is we'll continue to give you the information. The best channel of communication then is between you, Stan, and Sarah, just to stay on the same page. And it's about one-way communication as much as possible and not engaging in decision making. There's nothing really that prevents you from commenting on the information. It's discussing the work of the board that becomes problematic from an open meetings perspective.
Right.
So but there's nothing that prevents us from noticing a meeting and within 24 hours having a meeting to have the open discussion. So as soon as it gets to that point, like, yeah, we probably need to start making decisions. You can notice a meeting and have a 15-minute conversation. It doesn't have to be a big formal
event. And I just think as so long as we can all be flexible for that, you know, sort of quick meeting discussion, we can keep this thing moving pretty well and accommodate whatever schedule that staff has to have. Just recognizing that your schedules change hourly. Is there anyone that I mean, I spoke on format. Is there anybody that has any other ideas on format?
No, that sounded reasonable to me. I don't think we're going to be hanging out at the bar for these anytime soon.
No.
Except for those of us that might be immune for the next 90 days. So
All I can say is there's a reason the district put their office over next door to Pitchfork. All right. I think that the discussion tonight was excellent. I appreciate it. If there is no other discussion, I would stand prepared for a motion to adjourn.
I will put forth a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are 6:53 p.m.